and welcome to Girls with Goals. I'm Niamh Maher and I am delighted to welcome my guest to studio this week. Freelance journalist Aisling Keenan is with us as well, and also Denise Curtin, content creator with Her.ie is here too. Ladies, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Long-time follower, first-time meeting.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it.
But no, it doesn't feel like it at all. I slid into Aisling's DMs, which
my favorite type of thing.
Of course you did.
I do it quite frequently actually when I'm getting in touch with guests, and I was surprised that I didn't have previous messages in there because I felt like I knew you.
Yeah, I feel like that too. But a lot of people on the internet, which is completely creepy.
I know, isn't it?
That's what social media does. Like, it makes you feel like you know everything about someone you might not have even met. It's
I know.
Madness.
So, ladies, we're going to start with our game, but first off, I just thought I would ask you how your day is going because I am having an absolute nightmare day today.
Already?
Already. I was so happy in the car on the way to work, right? I was like, it's Friday. We record on a Friday. This will be going out later, but it's a Friday. You know the way you just have that kind of Friday feeling? All the DJs on the radio were a little bit giddy.
Yeah.
And everyone was just in a good mood. And then couldn't find any parking. When I got into work, I opened my cereal. I pulled my cereal out of the press the wrong way. So Honey Nut Loops all over the kitchen floor in the office, and my nail broke. So
Well, that's the ultimate female disaster, isn't
I mean,
it?
like
A broken nail.
It is, and it's just tiny little things. I was feeling too cocky in the car. Is your day going a little bit better?
I have to say, I haven't had as many, activities this morning as you, but my day's gone pretty well, actually, I have to say. Yeah.
That's good.
Not too bad.
Mine's
Denise?
going well as well. I woke up really early this morning because I had to be in work for 7 a.m, so I was feeling very sorry for myself. But it's picking up.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's good. It's turning around. The cereal was a huge low point for me, to be honest with you. I looked at it for a while and I thought, is this something that I can get away with?
Do you do this often? Because there was sugar everywhere yesterday, and I was like, it looks like Niamh Maher.
The sugar wasn't me. No, I saw that. But somebody walked away. Somebody spilled sugar all over the kitchen.
A hit and run,
and
gone.
then walked away. I was looking at this. Like when I say it was the whole pack of Honey Nut Loops, I think that's what they're called. I don't know. They're from Lidl anyway. And they were all over the floor. There was just no way that I could have walked away from it. Huh?
3-second rule? Did you put them into a bowl?
Probably couldn't have eaten them. No, I don't think I could ever eat something that falls on the floor in like an office. Because,
Yeah. Oh God.
maybe in your home, maybe, but
Not in
certainly
things
not
that
at
are
work.
washed in an office.
Yeah.
Still dodge.
Bring in your own disinfectant wipes.
Yeah, I was drinking tea from a glass there yesterday, and I got terrible stick for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I didn't realise that it was such a bad thing to drink tea from a glass. We all drink from keep cups with our glass.
Yeah.
It's just that the glass that you were drinking from was a glass that we used to have tequila in the office.
Fair.
On a rowdy Friday.
Maybe that's what you're after, though.
Like a
A little chaser with your tea.
tequila pick me
Like a
up.
placebo, you're thinking it is tequila, it is tequila.
It was delightful anyway. Right, let's play our game. Let's play our 6 words or less. So you have to describe yourself in 6 words or less, and it's for any of our listeners and readers of Her who may not know who you are. So it can be a sentence or it can be a word, whatever grabs your fancy.
So I've decided on check Instagram. Brevity isn't my forte.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
That's very good.
Because how can you put, I could not possibly put anything about myself in 6 words because I'm a writer and we're taught to use all the words.
Use all the words,
That's literally what, day one in
Absolutely.
university, get the words out, start using them.
I love that. Alison Spittle gave a similar one. She said, can't be described in 6 words. And I was like,
Brilliant.
Absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
But most people do. Most people give it a shot.
They try their best.
My other option was Beyonce. But I just thought that was
Brilliant.
too, just...
They do tell us not to do too much repetition in college as well
Yeah,
when
that
you're
too.
being a writer. Beyonce. Denise, 6 words or less. This is just getting ridiculous.
This is getting ridiculous. Now, you introduced this game as for people who don't know you. I've been on this show now a dozen times.
people know you.
So I feel like people know me and I'm running out of words to describe myself. So it's a bit like college too.
Okay, yeah.
If you were copying someone else's work and you try and find a word to change it, I'm doing that with all my words the entire time.
This is just a fun exercise for me, for Denise to continue to have to describe herself in
Has
6
anyone
words.
ever made you do it?
No. I've done it the odd time, but
Okay.
no, not really.
Yeah.
Probably never going to do it either, Ashley.
You did it one time.
I've done it once or
remember.
twice,
Yeah.
but it's my game.
It's your game and it's torture
I'm
for
in charge
me.
here.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay. I'm going to say ambitious, childish, weird, reliable, loyal, and trusting.
They're lovely words.
Thank you.
Oh, that's way better than mine.
Thank you.
I liked yours. I can't believe you said loyal.
Yeah, I know. Love Island. That's what she's thinking.
Oh, okay, right, Georgia, yeah. Okay.
Well, it's just loyal is just one of the words that it comes up quite frequently on the show.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah, which is great. I think it's
Yeah.
an amazing attribute to have.
Yeah.
Loyalty is fantastic. But everyone thinks they're loyal, which is great.
Maybe I should change again.
Well, maybe I should change my game.
Maybe
There
I
we go.
should stop playing.
6 words. Any 6 words except loyal.
Yeah. Ooh, 6 words, not loyal. Ooh, that doesn't just
Toughy.
You know, I'm really loyal, so.
doesn't have the same ring to it, does
No,
it?
it doesn't.
Aisling, you have
Yeah.
a new podcast that's coming out, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But up until this point, I just want to hear a little bit more about your career. So can you give us a rundown of your career? Because you're a freelance journalist. That's what we introduced you as well. And I find that a lot of people are really interested in freelancing because it is a tough gig.
It is tough.
A very tough gig. But you weren't always freelance.
No, I wasn't. From the very start, from when I was 2, I wanted to be a magazine journalist. My mother has videos of me literally when I was a baby flicking through magazines and commenting on the pages. So it was always in there. I went to DCU and did journalism, and then from there I did a ton of free internships, which is unfortunately the way a lot of people get into journalism and into particularly women's magazines, which is a notoriously difficult area that's only getting more difficult as the years go by. I interned at Stellar. I then got a job at U magazine as staff editor, and I did all their beauty. So I was kind of thrust into the beauty area, if you like, when I got there. I also had a beauty column in the Irish Independent when I was about 21, and I thought when I got the email from the editor, I thought she'd the wrong person. I got back and I was like, there's absolutely no conceivable way you're looking for me, but she was, and thank God. And then so after U magazine, I was in U magazine for really long. I think I was there for 5-6 years maybe. And I learned so much there. That was kind of my training ground. Harmonia is what the publishing company that used to publish it, and they had Irish Tatler and Woman's Way at the time, and there was just so many amazing editors that I learned everything from. Really in a kind of very traditional way. There was not much digital going on at the time, so I just learned all of the kind of print rules from those editors. And then I moved on to become deputy editor of Exposé magazine. And then I became editor of Exposé magazine after a while, and then Exposé magazine closed, and I lost my job, my dream job. So I had kind of achieved the thing that I'd always wanted to be. I always said to anyone who would listen that I wanted to be an editor by the time I was 30. And I achieved it when I was 28, and then lost it. So I was kind of on a high, a career high, and feeling real confident about everything, and then the magazine closed, like so many magazines are at the moment.
Absolutely,
In the UK, there's More and Glamour and all these ones. Company magazine, they're all gone. There's very few still. There's very few still publishing at the same rate that they were publishing. So even U magazine now isn't being printed anymore in Ireland, and so there's so
loss,
many.
isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's interesting for us because we do work in digital, so it's one of those things. But I mean, I have to say, when you were talking about growing up and stuff like that, buying a magazine is something that I think it's not just women; it's women and men. Everybody has that one magazine. Company was kind of it for me. I used to think that it was one of those kind of alt ones, and then do you remember they started using the paper as opposed to it because they wanted to be more sustainable, and I loved it. It was small enough you could fit it in your handbag. It would take me probably about 3 weeks to actually get through it because you're so busy and stuff. But magazines, I think, hold something special to each individual. Everybody has their favorite one that they used to read when they were younger, and still growing up. It is definitely, with the landscape changing, it's hard. So I'd say that must have been hard as well because, like you said, you were the editor and then you weren't.
Yeah, and it just, I mean, for me, magazines are really special, and I feel as though I spent 10 years training to be this very particular person, this editor of a print title, which is a very specific role. There obviously are transferable skills, but I hadn't been trained much in digital, and I hadn't really been doing, you know, the basics, yeah, but not, you know, I'd really kind of dug down into the print side of things, and then that whole job was just pulled from under me, and I like a couple of people who don't really like. A couple of my family members and stuff had said to me, "Why don't you just get another job as editor somewhere else for another magazine?" And I was like,
"It doesn't happen like that
at all."
Yeah, not in Ireland. You know, if I was in Manhattan, maybe like, but not in Ireland. There just weren't any other roles available.
Yeah.
And the roles that were becoming available as well, like they tend to go, like the industry is so small that they tend to go to people you know really well, and you know you don't want to pit yourself against other people in the industry either. And so that was a really kind of challenging time. And like for someone like me, like I love magazines so much. I have every issue of Cosmopolitan since I was 15. Like
that's insane.
That's a lot of paper in my house.
That's a lot of paper.
Like I have a whole room dedicated to magazines practically. But yeah, it's just that like working in magazines was always my dream, and to get there and be delighted about it and then for it to go was a kind of massive shake up.
The thing is, like, I would expect though that at some point, because like I've been fired from jobs, and you weren't fired, like the company that you were working for ceased essentially. But like on some level were you kind of like, it's not me, it's the changing face of the industry, you know? And I mean,
totally.
you kind of have to be like that.
I did, and I tried to really remind myself that. I just had to keep saying, it's not me, it's the industry, that it's not making ad revenue, it wasn't about the quality of the content. And that's kind of that was my side of things, and the team side of things, our kind of what we did every day. But it's very difficult to tell yourself that. It's very difficult, you know the way, like you say, if you hear 10 compliments but one piece of criticism, you're going to only listen to the one piece of criticism. So I just
that will sit with you.
I was telling myself the whole time, it's not you, like you can still do your job and whatever. But the fact remains, you know, the magazine that you are at the helm of no longer exists, and whether that's your fault directly or you're still involved. So I did blame myself a lot for the magazine closing, and even though I know it wasn't my fault, and you know, I was doing the best job that I could, and the team were doing the best job they could, there was nothing, you know, I still took a lot of it on, I suppose, and it still kind of hangs over me in a way, and I have a lot of imposter syndrome, you know, from that. And every time I go to, you know, a new job now as a freelancer, because you know, as a freelancer you have like 8 or 9 jobs, I just have so much self-doubt, and I didn't have that before, you know. I kind of had built myself up to be like, you know, I can do this, I'm confident in this job, and then that kind of shook me. And so now I'm still trying to build myself up to fully believing in myself again.
I think everybody in this industry suffers from imposter syndrome though.
I think so. And I think as well, when you get a fall, like no matter how small or how great, like if it impacts you deeply, it's so hard to recover from that and to move forward. And even like you were saying, when it's not your fault, it's so hard to tell yourself that, because at the end of the day, you are jobless, you know? So it's very hard to think like, well, there's nothing I could do about this, because like that in this industry, you have to be so thick-skinned, because things like that ultimately do happen and you have no say over it. So,
and there are times when things like don't happen for you because of it can be as simple as like a timing issue. It can be as simple as like that ad revenue. Like sometimes it's the fact that like at one time or another we've all just been walking paychecks and they can be expendable, you know? And I mean, at times that's happened, and you've known that you're the right person for the job, or you've known that this is the right path for you, but you know, the powers that be sometimes think otherwise. But so this happened. So then what happened for you next then?
Well, the magazine closed about 4 months before I got married. So I had to pay for my wedding. So I just had to get into work. I just had to throw myself into freelance life.
And it was freelancing.
Yeah, and I didn't have time to wait for an amazing role to come along. I didn't really have time to stress too much. I didn't have time to process any of it. So I just had to get straight back in and look for freelance work and try and get as much money together as I could to get married. And then while I was on my honeymoon, I got a really interesting job offer from a magazine in the UK. And I had, like I said, just got married, and I knew I wanted to settle and have a family in Ireland, which was Very difficult for me because all through my life I'd been very career focused and very ambitious, and to get an offer like that and have to turn it down. Now, I didn't have to turn it down. My husband was like, let's just move to the UK and, you know, uproot everything, and he's really supportive. But I knew that if I wanted to have a family and if I wanted to, you know, buy a house or whatever, I wanted to do it here. And I was at that age where, you know, biologically, and I know this is so, it's so silly, but we are under those pressures.
Absolutely.
Biologically, I had to make that call.
Yeah.
And it was really difficult because, you know, like I said, I'd been really ambitious, and it was, if it had come 2 years earlier maybe, or 3 years earlier, I would have immediately jumped at it. But I had to turn it down, which was really disappointing. So I just ploughed on with freelance stuff and tried to, you know, get as many regular clients as I could and as much regular work as I could. But it's really, really tough being freelance. Now, every job is tough. I completely acknowledge that. Every job is tough. But I almost feel like I have two jobs. One of my jobs is actually doing my job, and the other job is looking for jobs.
Yeah.
You know, so I constantly, like, when I wake up every day, I don't know necessarily where I'm going to work or who's going to give me work next week or next month or in the next 6 months. And I never know how much I'm going to earn, and I never know if the work I do get will stick around.
Yeah.
You know, so there's constant,
I think it's one of those things as well. Like, I've worked freelance before. You've probably worked freelance too, Denise. Yeah. It's something I think most people in the industry at some point or another have worked freelance. And I remember when I was freelance, I was chasing that contract because I just, like, there are times, even though, like, you know, on a week-to-week basis, I always had work, there are times when you feel unemployed and you're like, but I'm not unemployed, like, I'm self-employed and I'm freelancing and stuff like that. But there are times when it might be just a slower week or something like that, and the self-motivation was something that I struggled with. But I, at the same time, like, I look at freelancers like you, and I look at other people in the industry, like Caroline Foran, for example, like just people who work for themselves, and it's little things like your desk and stuff that I'm just like, see, if I'd had a desk like that, I feel like my whole freelance experience, it wouldn't have been me like sitting in my living room crying to my mom. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's where it was for me. But I was very early on in my career, and I think it was just a different thing for me. I never looked at it as actually a means that I could continue. I was always hunting that thing. So maybe because you came to it slightly later in your career, you might have been able to look at it a bit differently.
I think so, and I definitely think, like, that the desk thing is actually really important for me.
I think so, yeah.
Because when I get up every day, I could very well go down to my kitchen table and have my breakfast there and then just put my laptop in place of my bowl and go to work. But that wouldn't feel as, okay, I'm in work now. Whereas
you're not creating the space around you that feels like you're driven and motivated. Yeah, absolutely.
You really have to create an office environment. Like, you almost have to mimic what you would have had in a publishing company. Well, for me, that's what I've tried to do. Yeah, my desk is nicer than any publishing company I've ever worked in.
Oh my God, your desk is so, like,
Absolutely.
Aisling Keenan's Instagram.
For sure.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's so nice.
But I think as well, you know, the having to, like, fake it, having to pretend to yourself that you're in work is really important, and having structure, because there's absolutely no routine in my life at all. There's no routine in my week. There's hardly any routine even in a day. There's no 2 days that are the same. And I know for a lot of people who work like 9 to 6 or 9 to 5 or whatever, in a quite kind of repetitive sense, think, well, that sounds amazing. It's actually a massive challenge, as much of a challenge as it would be to work in a kind of 9 to 5 set environment.
Definitely.
There's no routine, you don't know where you're going to be tomorrow, you don't know where you're going to be next week, and you need to insert as much regularity and as much routine as you can.
Yeah.
So having the same desk to go to, having, like, you know, you have to just add in these really small little routines. So, you know, I make my list at the end of every day. I make a list for the next day, and, you know, there's certain just small things that you have to do.
Things that you would do, like, in an office environment normally. One of the other things that I always struggled with myself, and I think I still struggle with it, it's the self-promotion element that you have to do, not just if you're freelancing, that you have to do across many jobs. Like, and I think, you know, we've seen the likes of LinkedIn and stuff like that just absolutely skyrocket as that tool to self-promote. It's absolutely crucial, but it's something that has always sat weirdly with me. Not that I don't think it's important to do it, like, and I know that it's important to do it, but I remember early on in my career being told, like, the work will speak for itself. You don't have to, you know, like, shout your own praises constantly. And I remember thinking it was really solid advice, but at the same time, it was kind of before social media back then. And now it does feel very competitive and things are looked at, and you kind of do have to be, you have to back yourself,
Plugging
obviously.
yourself is so important. Like, you need
Yeah.
to shout about what you're doing, or like, because there's so much of it out there,
So
it can
much.
easily get forgotten about. So you have to like push it forward the whole time, and that can be very tiring, and it can seem quite monotonous sometimes. But I do think it's key almost.
I think you're very good at it. Like, I mean, Denise even saw, like, the other day, we launched, like, our, this whole thing. We launched our new logo there recently, and we had a night out. So I was having a good day today. I feel a lot better than I did yesterday. But, and we were taking some pictures with, like, the nice new branding in it and stuff. And Denise, you were just a queen. Like, she literally, like, she knew the angles, she knew what photo to get, because then eventually you knew that you were going to post this, and it was something that, because it was work, like, it really was.
It is work, and I think sometimes it's difficult when you're posting about work and things like that, especially when you have a lot of followers that are not in the industry, that you're afraid that you come off quite self-obsessed, or you come off like, look at me and look what I'm doing, and it's really difficult to try and just say, well, like, this is just my job, and although you're a teacher and you don't post about this, I have to post about my work, because it's half of like the job, you know.
Absolutely,
so I do find that's quite difficult. And even when we were taking the pictures, and Eve was saying to me, she's like, I feel so nervous, like, out here, like, you know, with people watching me take a picture, and I was like, but this is what we do. So unfortunately, this is what we have to do. You know?
And literally, like, Denise, she was not budging. Like, we were not leaving that street. We had the sunlight, and we were not leaving that street until we got the, like, I probably took about 7 or 8 pictures of Denise, and I was like, okay, cool. And Denise was like, no, like, we have only just begun.
And I also haven't seen these yet. So do you think that I'm just going to like
walk off,
like lock my phone and think there's something in there? Not a chance.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely not.
I think it's definitely, there's a bit of like, I never used to do that at the beginning of my career. So it's something that I'm still kind of getting used to. But I mean, when you're working freelance, Aisling, of course, self-promotion is absolutely key to you. How do you find that? And how did you find going from, say, like an established contract situation where now you have to kind of be like, look at me, look at what I'm doing?
So that's one of the parts that I really struggle with, because the need to do that self-promotion combined with the imposter syndrome just makes for a really uncomfortable, you know, combination. The self-promotion, I struggle with it immensely. Like, I don't know if it's an Irish thing. I feel like it's bred into us not to brag and not to shout about our achievements, and not to, you know, make people listen to things about us. Like, it feels very self-indulgent. But like that, like you said, like on Instagram, on social media, everyone is shouting about their achievements on social media.
The thing is, we're not even bragging. We are actually just talking about the work that we're doing. So
but it feels like a brag.
Yeah.
Even when we were saying that we're changing logo, and I was like, oh, you know, presenting this tonight, I was like, oh, look at me talking about myself. But this is literally just all I'm doing. You know?
And it's like absolutely crucial as well. And like you have a quite substantial following on Instagram as well. Like, you've got over 14,000 followers, is it?
Well, yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's very small. But I do
in comparison to me, it's fairly good. So,
but I don't know. I think like that just came from work, and it's weird because, you know, I've been contacted a few times for, you know, sponsored content and that sort of thing, and it feels really weird because I would never ever peg myself as an influencer, because I think that's like, they do a far better job at creating content and being influencers than I do, and I never kind of wanted to veer into that. I kind of always wanted to be like, well, I'm a journalist and this is what I do for work. But I think through the course of my work, I've gotten, you know, followers or whatever, because I think, you know, our jobs are interesting. You know, jobs in the media are seen to be interesting because people kind of generally think they know what a nurse does or they know what a teacher does. But for, you know, like, our job is kind of interesting because we get to interview, you know, celebrities, or we get to go on press trips, or, you know, things that are cool and fun and enjoyable. And so I think it's a bit of kind of, I think I've gotten a bit of a following because people are a little bit like intrigued by the various things that I do. But the self-promoting part of it, like, I just putting up, you know, I am always so reluctant. Like, I one of my friends asked me a while ago, what did I do that week? And I was, nothing really, you know, just a few bits. I had to go into here and I had to go into there. And she was like, did someone say you interviewed like Chris Pine, that famous guy? And I was like, oh yeah, I did that. That was grand. And she was kind of like do you want to
What?
expand on that at all?
Yeah.
Or, you know, and I was just like, you know, because not that it wasn't amazing, because I was totally flipping out, like, and felt extremely lucky to get those. I always feel extremely lucky to get those sorts of opportunities, but it is just work.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about our work on Instagram, again, it's not a brag. It's not that we're trying to say, look at us, how wonderful we're doing. It's just, this is what I did today.
Yeah, and we
know?
can get used to those kind of things that you forget that people are interested in seeing those. It's that insight that they kind of want to see that sometimes I think because it's our work.
Yeah, we forget.
We forget about that sometimes. You said there about like something that's intriguing, and I have to say the thing on your Instagram that I found when you posted it first so intriguing and so interesting is that, I hope I'm going to say it right.
Oh, synesthesia.
Synesthesia.
Oh my God, yes. This is the craziest thing ever. My mind was blown. Like, hearing about your story was the first time I had ever heard about it.
Yeah,
and
I'd never heard
it.
I had never heard about it before you spoke about it. So I'm sure like you get asked about it all the time and stuff, but if anybody is listening now or watching and they don't necessarily know, can you explain first what synesthesia is and then explain the version that you have?
Yeah. So
oh my God, I'm so excited.
And it's so weird because I didn't talk about this. I mean, my family and friends knew and stuff my whole life pretty much. Since I found out that I had it, my family and friends have known, but I'd never really spoken about it to like colleagues or acquaintances, or certainly not to anyone in like the media or whatever, until really, really recently, because I always assumed, like, and I've had a few people have weird reactions to it and think that it was some kind of, you know, I don't know, a hindrance to my life, or, but synesthesia essentially is a neurological condition that involves like cross-wiring of your senses.
Okay.
So for some people, like there's BBC documentaries and stuff on this, and there's like several different types, and there's one that's related to music, so people see music in colour. There's another one that's related to taste, where people taste words and taste people's names. So there was a guy whose girlfriend's name was Denise, and I think she tasted like earwax.
Oh.
So yeah, I thought I'd bring that to you today.
Yeah, thank you.
But,
Oh no.
I think that was like there's all different kinds of ones. Anyway, the one that I've got is it relates to colours and language. So basically all my letters have individual colours, and all my numbers have colours. Therefore, all the words that I say or read have colour. Months of the year have colour. People's names have colour. And then kind of a kind of symptom, I suppose, of the one that I have is that I see I get a sense of people. I don't want to say people's auras, because I'm not, you know, I don't see angels around people or anything like that. But I see people in colour. So, for instance, when I met you this morning, I saw that you were purple.
Stop, am I?
You're purple, and you're on Thursday, and your letter is C, and your number is 6.
Wow.
Now, I just want to clarify, I don't think you're purple. I'm not looking at a purple woman in front of me, but it's a mind's eye thing. So the way I try and explain it is, if I say to you Manchester United,
I think of red.
Yeah,
right.
you would, naturally.
So now when someone says to me Niamh Maher,
you'll think of
purple.
purple. That is wow. Okay, so that explains it so much more than like what I was picturing, because I was picturing a purple Niamh, but it's not that.
It's just a subconscious
it's a mind's
thing
eye.
that you think
yeah,
of. Okay,
it's a mind's eye.
wow.
And the letter combination and all that comes with it. So
yeah. Wow,
so
that's a really
cool.
interesting thing. So it's because I was reading about, I fell into a rabbit hole trying to find out as much information on this as I could. So a lot of people, there's so many different types that it's hard to like pinpoint one thing, but I read this one article, and I don't know whether this is like what you see, Aisling, but the letters for colours. So if they're reading something, they're not looking at like a rake of colours. It's like a glow.
Yeah.
And that can like be there at times. And I was reading that going like, oh my God, how amazing would that be to like see a glow? But this isn't something that like you developed. This is something that you've always had. So whereby for us, and I took a test, I'm definitely not, I don't have it. I really wanted to. And I was like trying my best, but I 100% don't have it. Freaked. But for us, like it sounds lovely. Like it sounds kind of a little bit magical.
It does
It
sound
is.
magical,
It is.
absolutely.
It's brilliant. Like I really enjoy having it, and there's no, like, it's kind of enhanced my life rather than, you know, taken away from it at all. The only thing that I struggled with was in school.
I was going to ask that,
Yeah, because it helped in the sense that, and maybe this is part of the reason why I love words and writing and stuff. It helped. I can spell any word that I've seen. So if I've seen a word written down, I'll never forget how to spell it. So
Wow.
if I've read a word, it's in there and it's locked in, and I can pretty much always spell it. And things like if there's a double C in a word or a double S,
Yeah.
I never forget those quirks, because for me a double S is really, really, really yellow.
Okay.
So if in the word necessary I can see a big yellow, it's almost like I can see a big yellow ball.
Because the double S is something that a lot of people struggle with when they're together. It's like, is there one S? Is there two S? So
Totally.
that's like something that just
that
sticks
helps.
out of you.
Yeah,
Wow.
it jumps out at me. And likewise, I think it helped me in work, because when I'm sub-editing a page, errors
Pop up
jump
at
out.
you. Oh my God,
yeah,
that is
so it's handy. Now
God.
it's completely a flawed system. I mean, things often I often miss things,
Yeah.
of course, like any editor, but it does help, and it helps when I'm subbing to because a word, if the word is misspelled, it will pop off the page because the colours are wrong for me.
Yeah.
If it's a word I've seen before, obviously. So that helped. But on the other side of then, maths for me was virtually impossible, because in particular algebra, because for me,
Oh, it's letters as well.
letters, yeah. So the letters for me have colours. So say the letter A is pink, and the number 4 is pink, and A and pink and 4 are all together on a Saturday, and so A could never equal anything before.
Right.
Do you know what I
okay.
mean?
Yeah.
So like I'd be doing an equation,
Yeah.
and I'd see the letter A, and I'd be like, well, that's 4, and then I'd move on, and obviously I'd get the wrong answer
So
everywhere.
without even thinking it, you would apply the number.
would apply a 4
So
to
that's
that,
it's
yeah.
like me saying that Manchester United is blue,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
it's never going to
never
be
gonna
right.
Yeah,
No.
it's never going to be right.
Wow.
And there's certain things that make me feel quite uncomfortable, like a really bad reg plate on a car. You know, if I anytime I'm like buying a car, I'm very specific about and what's the number on the number plate, because if it's a bad combination, it'll make me feel uncomfortable.
Wow, it's
And would
so
it be because it's a bad combination of colours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, my own reg plate is 16566, and that's lovely, and that's fine, that really works. But if there had been a 2 in there, I wouldn't. It sounds so mad. I'm
so
sorry.
cool.
I understand.
It's so
how
I don't
mad
think
that
it sounds bad. I think the more that you explain it, the more like it makes sense, and it doesn't like jar at all. It's like that makes perfect sense. If like in the future, like you mentioned earlier that you wanted to have a family and stuff, will like the naming of your child be like really crucial in terms of the way it's going to look and feel?
Totally. Yeah. Like there's certain names that I just. It's not that I don't like certain names. It's just there's certain names that I wouldn't want to be saying every day.
Yeah.
Do you know the kind of way? So,
Yeah.
and it applies to people as well. I mean, the kind of averse reaction I'd have to the reg plate, I have that to people as well occasionally. So I have met people. Now it doesn't happen massively often or anything, but I've met people where, so your set obviously is Thursday purple, 6 and C, right? So that really works for me.
Yeah.
Because 6 is purple and C is purple and Thursday's purple, and it all just goes, right?
Mixes in well, yeah.
And then there's certain, there's other days of the week, like Tuesday is green. So if you're on Tuesday, you have green letters and green numbers. And again, I'm aware of how mental this sounds.
It actually
But
doesn't.
I've met people. I remember the kind of story I always tell people to get them to understand is I was standing on Henry Street outside Half Price Jewelers when I was about 15. I was waiting for someone, and a guy walked up beside me, and I just caught him in my peripheral vision. I didn't see him really. And straight away I started to feel nauseous, and I was like, why do I feel sick all of a sudden? And then I looked at him kind of more intensely, and his set was so mismatched and so off for me that I had to move away from him, and I almost threw up. It made me feel so uncomfortable that I was almost physically sick. And his set was just really, really, the way, the Thursday and the 6 and C, that all works. His was like, he was on Sunday and he had Wednesday's characteristics and colours. So it was really all over the place.
Yeah.
And my mother obviously thinks that I can identify serial killers and that man was some kind of criminal.
You never know though. It's definitely very interesting, because would people's days of the week normally match up to colours and numbers usually?
Always, yeah, always. So yeah, there always is a set,
And the thing is, like, you're saying that sounds odd, but realistically, like, this is a sensory thing that's happening in your brain. So, like, if the way it can happen, if you have a smell that just makes you feel physically ill, and like, I don't like I don't like rotisserie chickens in supermarkets. Like I literally like will avoid that counter. Like hot counters make me feel ill. It's just the smell. I think about the grease. I think about the skin. I think about the animal, and it just makes
it brings up like a range of emotions.
Exactly, and I physically feel ill from that. Like that's the same thing. Now, obviously, like it's different. Mine is obviously incredibly common. Loads of people don't like the smells of things.
Yeah, but it is.
But like
it's
you were having a physical
sensorial
reaction.
thing. Yeah, it is to do with senses. So it is. That's exactly it. You know, my senses are all kind of cross-wired.
Yeah.
And so things that would make you, like a smell that might make you feel sick, it's a set of colours or a set of numbers or a person that would make me feel sick, which is inconvenient at times.
Like, you know the way you say stuff like, oh, if we have like a nail varnish and it smells like candy floss or something, like we're like, oh, that it smells really sweet, like, and that will imagine us eating candy floss. We've never tasted nail varnish. We don't know what that tastes like, but because the smell we're identifying with, so it's all sensory. So I understand, but at the same time, it just seems like you are like on another level.
Well, I mean, this is the funny thing. I don't drink or do drugs, and I feel like sometimes my life is colourful enough without any of that sort of thing.
Well, I did read as well that sometimes these kind of sensory things can happen if you're on psychedelic drugs, and that's like one of the things. But this isn't something that like people are trying to find a cure for or anything like that. It's just something something like, is it common?
I think it's something like maybe 0.5% of the population have, but a lot of people don't know they have it, because I didn't know I had it until I was 15, and the reason I didn't know I had it was because I thought everyone had it. You know, I didn't think I didn't think there was anything different about my experience. I thought that everyone knew that my mother was blue, and that everyone knew that my father was brown. You know what I mean? I thought that this was just what happened.
It's just like the way we learned that the sky is blue and the grass is green. Like,
exactly. And I thought that everyone was completely aware that, you know, the number 2 is yellow, the number 3 is blue. Like, I just thought that was what everyone saw.
Yeah.
And so when I was about 15, one of my aunts was listening to the radio, and there was a professor from Trinity on talking about this study of this synesthesia condition that people have, and she was looking for people to take part, and if anyone identified with any of the symptoms, to get in touch. And my aunt rang my mother and said, here, I think this is what Aisling's been doing for the last however many years, because as a child I would make lists of my family members and put their colour and day and whatever next to them. And my mother just thought I was mental and that I should be, you know, she just thought I hoped I'd grow out of it or whatever. And so I got in touch with the guys at Trinity, and then I went in and took part in their study, and that's when they did like MRIs, and the EEG helmet was put on me, and they basically had to do some consistency tests to make sure that I actually had synesthesia, and to make sure that it was, you know, like a legitimate case, I suppose. So then once they did that, they did all these tests, and so there's this like cool one where they put like 250 odd, I can't remember the number of shades of the same colour onto a screen in all different, just blocks basically. And then they showed me the letter A, and I picked what colour of the 255 shades of the same colour pink, which one my A was. And then they took it down, mixed them up and put them back up, and I was able to locate the exact shade. So it's a very specific, you know, it kind of gives you a tiny superpower in that you can completely useless ones though, you know. I mean, I'm never the police are never going to ring me and be like, listen, we have a very specific colour emergency that you need to get down here for. But you know, so it's not exactly helpful, but I quite enjoy having it, and I also find the kind of person element of it as an advanced form of everyone's natural instinct. So the natural instinct that everyone has about people when they meet them. You know, you'll meet someone and you'll go, I really like that person, and straight away you'll just get a good vibe off them, and you'll know that, you know, you could potentially be friends with them, or you could potentially, you know, spend time with them. Likewise, when you meet someone and you're like, don't really vibe with them. I kind of have like an advanced version of that.
That's what it kind of sounds like.
That's the way I see it.
Warning, and almost like a safety thing that you have for yourself, like almost like a guardian angel or something, that like you're aware if someone's going to be like a good or bad seed, which is like really, really interesting.
Do you know what? You know that meme that's going around Instagram at the moment, where it's like, I wish I could see a 30-second trailer of a person so I know what I'm getting myself into.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
I feel like I have that.
Wow.
You know, I feel like I can see a 30 second trailer of a person before I involve myself with them. Do you know?
Wow.
So, yeah.
Oh my God, I hope my trailer was okay. This is what I might do. I'm like,
No, it's
purple,
totally fine. I would
Purple
totally,
sounds good.
Yeah, no, purple is good. And the fact
Okay.
that, you know, again, it doesn't make sense to anyone but me, but the fact that you've got the 6 and the C on the same day and it's
Yeah.
purple, it's all good.
Oh my God, I'm so
Yours
glad.
is all good too, by the
Oh,
way.
great. What's mine?
You're really light blue, so you're
that's
very
nice.
early on a Monday morning. And actually what's lovely is your last name is also blue. So it really helps me, you know, like
Yeah.
it makes me feel a lot better about you.
Oh, I love that.
That's nice. Can I trade colours with Denise though? Because blue
you like blue?
Blue is my favourite colour.
Is it?
yeah.
Okay.
That's not possible.
No, I'm
Sorry.
not trading.
Okay,
That's
you're
fine.
royal purple and that's the end of it.
I'm royal purple. Okay, I'm not mad at purple. I'm
No,
fine
yeah,
with that.
yeah.
I find it so
There are worse
interesting.
colours.
Yeah, I
Like
would
there's
say
a lot
so.
of men that are brown.
Do you know, I was
they don't
literally
like
just
that.
thinking, what about brown? I
Yeah,
feel like
there's
brown...
a lot of men that are brown because brown is my Friday colour.
Okay.
And the vast majority of men are either on Monday or Friday, and so
Okay.
a lot of men are like brown, and I'm like no, like you know, furniture, you're like mahogany, or sometimes I say chocolate. I try to keep them away from
nice.
the toilet
Yeah.
connotations.
Yeah, but I
And
mean,
just-
I kind of get that. Like
Yeah.
brown, it's definitely more of a masculine kind of a,
True,
a
yeah.
tone
Like
to
a
it.
brown shoe and
You
coppers.
do,
Yeah.
you do. You think of a brown shoe.
in coppers, yeah, specifically.
Oh, Denise, I don't know whether it would be a good thing if you could see colours or not. 'cause
Oh,
I
God,
feel like
no, my mind is weird enough.
I
don't
feel like
need
you just say to people, brown shoe. Like straight away.
Oh,
to
I
them.
would, and I'd be like, yeah, it's weird. I'm sorry. I'd be like, your colour is not vibing, and they'd be like,
But I have to do that sometimes. Like there's people that I meet that I just have to be like, and just you know move away from, just
Yeah.
say, kind of nod and acknowledge them, and like it's happened in really awkward situations, like in work environments and stuff, where I've had a colleague that I just can't, can't, not that I can't interact with them, it's not that bad, but it's just that I know I can't form any sort of bond or friendship or anything, so it can be quite tricky.
That happens to everybody. Like there are certain
Yeah.
people that you just can't necessarily have fluid conversations with, and like that's kind of a stretch for me because to be honest with you, I could talk to anybody about anything, but still, you know, when sometimes you're in a situation with someone and you're kind of thinking about when this interaction will end.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It
No.
just means that you may not be compatible with them.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered about what is that, because that person has a huge amount of people who they're compatible with. I have a huge amount of people that I'm compatible with, but sometimes you're just not compatible with other people. What I feel like with you though, Aisling, is that you're actually being shown proof as to why you're not compatible with some people.
I just have a logic to it. Like I and if I meet someone and I think, wow, I really like their vibe, I really think they're a great person, I think I'm going to get on with them, I know that we're going to have great chats, it's almost like my synesthesia lets me just tick that box and go, yeah, I know that to be a fact. And likewise with the opposite.
Now, where can we buy this synesthesia? Yes.
I'll rent it out.
I will take 2, please. I'd love it. I'd love to just experience it for a day, just to see.
yeah, it's almost like someone in your mind being like, all is good, what you think is right, and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just confirmation that your instinct is doing a good job, I think, yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, I could talk about this all day, but let's talk about just let's move on to the podcast. So you're starting a new podcast and it's called Private Education.
Yes.
And it is a sex and relationship podcast. Is it fair to say that that's kind of a little bit away from what you might be known for?
Yeah, I think I probably am most known for beauty, but in
yeah.
actual and for kind of journalism in general,
Yeah,
and but I did write the sex features for You magazine for the entire time I was there.
Cool.
And also I was on, I used to contribute to Spin and 98 FM a lot as their love oracle. Now they gave me that title. I did not I did not apply for that title.
Denise is a former
But,
spinhead.
Yeah, I was in the Set West, so I know all about Spin.
Okay, so they'd just call me if they'd have like a reader query about a relationship or whatever. So they'd get me on and I'd give my best advice or whatever.
I love Oracle.
I love Oracle too.
Yeah, that's
amazing, yeah.
So I have done that, and that kind of led me into interest in that general area.
Yeah.
I also just feel really strongly that in Ireland there's still a bit of a taboo about talking about sex and relationships, and the jig is up. We are all doing it, and it motivates so many of us.
Yeah.
Sex and relationships motivate so much of our lives, where we go, who we go with, why we go out, why we do that, you know what I mean? And as much as obviously our careers motivate us as well, when we're in work, we're probably thinking, does that guy over there fancy me? And is that why he's being, you know what I mean? Like there's so many of our daily interactions that revolve in a way around sex, sexual chemistry, relationships, and friendships as well. We're going to talk
Absolutely.
about all kinds of relationships.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's one of those things that, like, I was just talking to Dermot, who has your bag in the other room, hopefully, about this the other day, and we were actually talking. I don't know how we got onto it, but we were just talking about that and how, like you said, so many people are fueled by sexual chemistry, love, all of these emotions that, like, go on in our bodies as humans, unless you don't have those, which like happens to some people. I think they're called sociopaths. But we are, like, I mean, some of the biggest decisions that we make in our lives can come from sex, and it can come from love, and it can come from all of these different things. So, and obviously I think, like, being career women and being really focused on our career is one element, but, like, you know, it's a huge part of everybody's day-to-day life. And I think that a lot of our decisions can sometimes come from those emotions that we feel, that no matter what age you are, sometimes you don't understand. So the tagline for your show, which I think is great, is the Smart Sex and Relationships Podcast. So, like, when you say, like, the Smart Sex and Relationships Podcast, like, what was that differentiation? Is it just that you want to kind of get down into the educational element of it?
Totally. So and that's why I picked private education as the title as well, because I didn't want to call it, sex sells. I didn't want it to just scream.
You didn't want it to be like a sexy
No,
podcast,
and I didn't
yeah.
want to be a forum for people to come on, guests to come on and talk about their conquests. Like, that's not what it is.
Yeah.
It's not about, like, oh, how many times have you done this, and have you ever tried this position? It's not, I don't want to say sleazy, because sex isn't sleazy, and that's actually what I'm trying to get across. I don't want sex to be looked at as something to laugh about or talk about in hushed tones, or be ashamed of, or be worried about. I want people to be able to have confident and informed and, knowledgeable discussions about sex and about the things that sex makes you do, and the decisions you make, like you said, the mistakes you make, and then also, things like sexual health and consent. Like, all of those things are still so, like, I was reading, I don't know, Richie Sadlier wrote an article the other day where it was a transcript of he had a conversation with transition year boys about consent.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of grim reading. And I think, young people, but adults as well, really need to be more informed when it comes to sex and what's okay and what's not. And also, of course, the pursuit of pleasure, because growing up, we were never, no one ever said, no one ever said to us, like, pleasure is something that you should aim for and try and achieve. And from both perspectives, from a male perspective, female perspective, if you're in a gay relationship, whatever it is, sex is something to be enjoyed. It's something we all do, and it's something we should all be doing in a more healthy, kind of educated way.
I think it's a nice hook, Aisling, because, like, even when I was talking to Denise about this show today, I was like, I actually said, that you have this new sex and relationships podcast that's coming out. We've spoken about sex quite a bit on the show from time to time. And to be honest with you, like, sometimes it does descend into laughter. And I even said to Denise, I don't want to talk about sex too much. And not because I don't think it's really important to talk about, like, what you're doing, but sometimes it becomes the easy sell on a show. No matter what the show is, sometimes it's like, well, there's girls in a room and they're going to be talking about sex, and it almost becomes too easy.
And it's like these giddy, girly chats about like penises and
that's exactly
having sex and stuff like that. And it does become this, like, giggly taboo thing still that we're talking about in a quiet room, like in the toilets of a club kind of vibe.
That's it, yeah.
And I mean,
and that's the exact opposite of what you're trying to do, essentially.
But I mean, I want to bring humour to it as well, because...
Well, it does. I mean, that happens naturally
that
as well.
does happen naturally. And also, it's not something to take very seriously.
No,
It is something that's enjoyable and pleasurable and fun and funny, and funny things happen, and
100%.
And sometimes you do want to just sit with your friends and talk about penises. That's just
Absolutely.
And that's okay too.
And that's fine. But it's kind of it is just opening the floor. It's about letting people know that having those conversations is fine. You don't have to be embarrassed. You don't have to be ashamed. You don't have to feel as though you can't talk about something that's happened in your sex life with your friend. Because I found, as well as kind of, I think maybe it's led on from writing about sex for You magazine, the whole time that I was doing that, my friends kind of thought, okay, well, she's writing about it, so she's obviously comfortable talking about it. So they would come to me with their queries. And, sometimes they were, serious things. Sometimes they were really lighthearted things that they just wanted to run by me.
Yeah.
And I was comfortable using the terminology around sex. I don't know where I got that. I suppose being brought up, I was just allowed to talk about anything and felt comfortable talking about anything. But having written about it for so long, I'm just comfortable with it. So I thought if anyone was to, I guess, present or host a podcast about that topic, it should be someone who's just, I'm not an expert by any stretch. I just am comfortable with the topic, and I'm comfortable with making people comfortable with the topic. I feel like I can open up a safe space, I suppose, for people to just feel okay about saying the words that we are all kind of ashamed to say in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think, like, in terms of, podcasting in general, like, there's so much out there now as well, but I think that there's always room for more informed conversations on anything. And it sounds like you're coming at it from kind of like a different angle than what I've seen before, which I think is really...
It's very interesting.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
really
Absolutely.
interesting. So are you going to have guests on? Is that kind of
I'm going to have guests.
Jizz, I almost said, but like
the jizz.
that
is the jizz. That was actually the other name. It was either private education or the jizz.
The jizz.
Yeah.
I mean, trademark.
I'm going to have guests on, so it won't just be me talking down the mic. I'm going to have guests on from all walks of life, from all kinds of... I'm not just going to have, people of note on. I'm going to have I'm going to ask experts, sex experts. I'm going to ask on relationship psychologists, people who kind of are vocal in that area. So people who talk about consent on social media, people who talk about sexual health. And then I'm just going to have, people on to talk about their experiences and not necessarily, because when I'm emailing people asking them to be guests, they're like, well, hang on now, am I going to have to, because my husband or my girlfriend or my partner is not going to want to talk about, they're not going to want me to say, well, last night this is what we did. I'm kind of like, that's not what I want. I just want the conversation to flow. And if you want to, give some personal experience, that's
Great.
fine.
And
If you don't, that's also fine. And I know from my perspective, there will be a lot of, a friend of mine, there will be a lot of that.
But like it's natural as well, and that's
Totally.
just kind of to do with privacy more than anything.
Exactly.
Because if the conversation is being had, that's the crucial component, and it doesn't necessarily matter if you're going to say, well, it was Steve last week, or it was Alan a month ago. Do you know what I mean? Like it's about the actual conversation,
and talking about it out loud and vocally, and not hush hush, and not seeing it as being something that is taboo.
Yeah. I love that you spoke about pleasure there, because we're actually going to be doing a pleasure month on Her.
Amazing.
Probably in June, like all focused on pleasure, like loads of different things about that. And I remember we were kind of just composing a list of it. Like there's just so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Like there really is. Like you can hit the tip of the iceberg and think that you've got it. And I was like, I think we could have a pleasure year if I'm being totally honest with you. Like there's so much to talk about, like you said, Aisling, that a lot of, I think it's women in particular, to be honest with you, like not saying, but I think it's the messages that men are sent through the media and through like different things. Like it's changing now, but like growing up, pleasure was not something that I necessarily associated with sex straight away. The first hurdle was just getting over it. As in, I was like, I've heard it's going to hurt. Yeah. Let's do this. Do you know? Like that was something that was playing in my mind.
But the big thing for girls growing up, inevitably, excuse me, is pregnancy.
Yeah.
So the first hurdle for me was, don't have sex because you might get pregnant.
Yeah.
And you don't, you're not ready to have a baby. You're only 16, 17. The kind of way.
I grew up watching 16 and Pregnant on MTV, and I was always thinking, if I can just get past 16, like watching that program, I was like, this can't happen to me. Like it's the fear of God that's put into you that like if you do have sex, you could get pregnant, and then that's on you.
It's ironic. You spend your 20s then trying not to get pregnant as well, especially if you're like out of relationships and you might be having more frivolous sex with like loads of different partners or whatever. You spend your 20s trying not to have sex, and then you spend your 30s trying to get pregnant.
Yeah, I know.
It's just like the flip reverse. I don't know how it happens. I don't know when it happens. I think it kind of comes at 26, 27, and then the conversation changes entirely from everybody, from your peers, from your parents, from your relatives. Like it's, when's the baby coming?
It's a case of buckle down now. You've had your fun.
That's exactly it. Yeah, exactly.
And this is the thing: the fun shouldn't stop when when you get married, or the fun shouldn't stop when you're in a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
And like that, I want people to feel okay. Because I kind of think there's still a double standard for men and for women, in that you know, like that old thing of if a man has lots of sexual partners, that's an achievement, and if a woman has lots of sexual partners, it's still seen as a negative thing. And
Yeah.
I really want people to move past that and see that no matter how many sexual partners either gender has had, or
Yeah.
like, you know, that isn't what makes a person. It's not what qualifies them. It's not what defines them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of, there's so many messages really that I want to kind of get
think
across.
It's exciting though, because even the moment that we start talking about like the pleasure element of it, you get like, I'm not getting like that excited, but like you get excited about it because it's a nice positive conversation that you're having about something that you are allowed and entitled to do to enjoy yourself, you know?
I think what's important about speaking about pleasure anyway, and about the pleasure month that we're doing, is that like women do love sex, and we think about sex all the time.
Like
we think
literally
about
all
sex
the time.
as much as men. And I think that's often forgotten, that it's like a man brings up sex and it's like, oh, sex, you say, like as if we hadn't thought about it at all, and now that they brought it up, we think about it.
Yeah.
But it's just that like equal sexes can think about sex as much as possible, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, look, private education sounds exciting. We don't have a date yet of when it's coming, but it's coming soon.
Coming soon. I hope
Way!
this month. Yeah, coming soon. No pun intended. Actually, that's that. I put that on Instagram the other day. I was like, coming soon. No pun intended.
Hopefully.
But I would hope to have the first batch of episodes ready by the end of April. So this month, hopefully. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, look, we're going to have to let you go because I think we've been chatting for a good while, but it was an absolute pleasure to have you in. Thank you so much for sharing all of your incredible stories. I can't wait to listen to the podcast. Invite me on. I'd love to talk about sex.
Oh, I will.
Yeah. Amazing.
Locked in, both of you.
And thank you for giving us our colours.
Yes, I'm really excited.
Go through my day now, a royal purple, and I'm feeling it. Yeah.
I know someone who got their set tattooed on them.
Really?
Yeah. So if you want to take it a step further.
Do you have your own colours? I didn't even ask you.
I don't. That's the weirdest thing ever.
okay.
I've tried. I stare in the mirror all day long. Can't find my own colours.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
It's crazy though, because like obviously when you see us, you can see all of those, but then when you see yourself, you just see yourself.
It's a little scary, I'll be honest. You know.
But I wonder, other people would see colours on you though. Other people who have synesthesia.
Yeah, they do, and I have gotten into stand-up arguments about what colour I am, or what what colour
I want to be at those arguments.
Yeah, oh my god, same. I'm like, this is popcorn.
Yeah.
It's really very odd, I'll be honest.
Amazing. We just like started talking about synesthesia again. Okay, Denise Curtin and Aisling Keenan, thank you so much for coming in. I'm Niamh Maher, and we will chat to you next week.